But straight into something that's very, very important, something critical to our democracy, and it broke today. You've been misled about The Voice, and today the real agenda was exposed in a brawl between people who are actually advising Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on how to put it up, make it work. In fact, this could be the day The Voice was broken, destroyed, even though Albanese has launched a whole week of events to promote this de facto Aboriginal-only parliament. Now, from the start, I said there was a trick to this voice. I mean, why would Labor actually want to put it in our constitution? And because that's what the referendum later this year is going to be about. To actually get your permission to change our constitution, which is the way we're governed, to include this voice. Now, from the start, you were told by the Prime Minister, oh, don't worry, support this voice. It's going to be harmless. It's not going to have any power. It's just there to give advice.
It will simply be an advisory group that will be not above Parliament. Its advice doesn't have to be taken.
But also from the start, I said, you are being conned. If it's just advisory, why put it in the Constitution? And the answer seemed obvious, because that way you could give it real power with the help of activist judges in particular. You see, putting it in the Constitution, saying that this voice should advise, and not just Parliament, but the executive government, that's in Albanese's own words, also implies the government then has a legal duty to listen. And that means this voice could stop governments doing anything until the voice took its sweet time, saying what it thought on anything from tax policy to planning laws. And I'll give you an example. A cyclone hits Queensland. The government wants to rush through some package of help. And this voice, as Aboriginal Parliament, says, no, can't do it, not before you consult us. This affects Aborigines too. And a High Court judge confirms, yes, the government can't do anything until the voice has spoken and government has listened. And the result, of course, this race-based parliament will in effect have a veto on your government, even though 97% of you can't even vote for it because you're the wrong race. How could we even be thinking of doing something so racist and so undemocratic? But last year, you know, we were told by one of the 8 constitutional law experts advising the Prime Minister's referendum working group that's designing his voice, this guy, Professor Greg Craven, he mocked us for raising this problem. He mocked even lawyers making this argument, calling them chicken littles. He sneered this legal fright fest is bizarre, and he mocked claims that a court would draw dangerous implications from establishment of the voice and impose legal obligations around consultation with the voice. Oh, how silly we were to say that is exactly what would happen. But Greg Craven, I should say, is a friend of mine. Was, maybe, I don't know. I hope you'll take this. But Greg Craven has now had a rude shock, a conversion on the road to Damascus. His eyes have been opened, you see, by the fanatics that he's dealing with on the Prime Minister's referendum group, and he's now done a backflip. He now writes in the Australian newspaper, Albanese's proposed constitutional amendment says the voice can make representations to the executive government. But what if government decides to act even before a representation from the voice could be made? Could someone go to court and stop any action until a representation has been considered? And he now says this question alone, which the government's never answered, could kill the voice, would kill it. Because who wants a bunch of race activists given the power to stop your governments from acting in decision after decision? Craven is now being made to pay for letting the cat out of the bag. Others on Albanese's referendum group are attacking him anonymously, calling him a crybaby, which makes you wonder, of course. I mean, Craven's actually a supporter of the voice, has been for years. This voice that's actually meant to bring us together, says the Prime Minister. Well, I tell you what, if the voice is causing this division, even among the people designing it, you're a fanatic, you're a crybaby, you're a wrecker, resign. Well, if it's doing that to the supporters, what's it going to do to the rest of us? But back to this critical point that is even Greg Craven now panicking. Will this voice that Labor is pushing actually be able to stop our elected government from acting? This is an absolutely critical question. Now, we could be creating a race-based and unelected monster in our constitution with the power to cripple our democracy. Well, today that vital question was answered by this woman, Professor Marcia Langton, one of the two co-chairs of Albanese's referendum working group. She's one of the key architects, therefore, of his planned voice. Wrote this great report on how it's going to work. And listen to her this morning tell the ABC that yes, it is true. We do want the voice to have this power.
If a decision is made, a government decision is made without listening to the voice, it could be challenged in the High Court and potentially stopped from being implemented until the voice had been heard.
That's a possibility, and why wouldn't we want that to be the case? If nothing that the voice says is subject to the ordinary laws of Australia, in other words, it's completely gutted and has no safe standing, if you like, then the government can ignore all of the voice's decisions with the impunity. And I think that's what Craven's aiming for. He's aiming for, you know, a toothless tiger.
You heard her. That is the architect of Anthony Albanese's voice to Parliament, one of the two co-architects of that voice to Parliament, confirming it. Finally saying what the Prime Minister will not admit. Why wouldn't she want the power to stop government's decisions? Else this is just going to be a toothless tiger, yes. The people pushing this voice want real power. Power over your parliament in our constitution. Their apartheid agenda has just been exposed by the very people now designing this voice. You have been warned.